discuss the next topic that is a part of CBSE syllabus, Introduction of Water, Occurrence and Importance. So, do you know about the details of water? You know water is a gift for your life. Why is water so popular? Because nothing absolutely can exist without water. And what is the percentage of water in your body? 65% of your body is made up of water. Most of the fruits contain a good percentage of water. Water is made up of hydrogen, 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. What is the percentage of water on the surface of Earth? Water covers 71% of Earth's surface. What water percentage on the Earth is in the various water bodies like ocean, saline lake, inland sea, polar ice, glaciers, groundwater, lake, soil, water vapor, rivers. So what is the percentage of groundwater on the surface of water? Give a thought to this. And the answer is 0.61. Groundwater is present in the percentage of 0.61. Polar ice and glaciers 2.04, saline lakes 0.008, and oceans, the major percentage of water on the surface of Earth is in oceans, 97.33%. Percentage of water in the human body, 65%. Now, physical properties of water. It is a colorless, tasteless liquid. The unusual property of water is due to the presence of extensive hydrogen bonding in condensed phase, that is solid and liquid states. And you know, water forms hydrogen bonds with other molecules. And most of its properties are because of its tendency to form hydrogen bonds. Because of its tendency to form hydrogen bonds, it is also called an associated liquid. Due to extensive hydrogen bonding, water has high freezing point, high boiling point, high heat of vaporization. So what are the reasons of all these properties? All these properties are due to tendency of water to form hydrogen bonds. So in comparison to H2S and H2SE, sulfur and selenium belonging to the same family as oxygen, water has higher freezing point, boiling point, heat of vaporization as compared to H2S and H2SE because of its tendency to form hydrogen bonding. The high heat of vaporization and high heat capacity are responsible for moderation of climate and body temperature of living beings. Basically, what is the meaning of high heat of vaporization? It is the amount of heat required to convert 1 mole of water liquid to water vapor. And what is heat capacity? It is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a given amount of water by 1 degree C. So high heat of vaporization and heat capacity are responsible for moderation of climate and both body temperature of living beings. Water is also an excellent solvent for transportation of ions and molecules required for plants and animals metabolism. And water basically is a universal solvent. It can dissolve a large variety of substances in it. Covalent compounds like alcohols and carbohydrates also dissolve in water due to tendency to form hydrogen bonds with polar molecules. Physical properties of water: molecular mass 18.015, melting point 273 Kelvin, boiling point 373, enthalpy of formation is negative, means it's a stable compound. Its enthalpy of vaporization is 40.66. Enthalpy of fusion, vaporization means the energy needed to convert liquid water to water vapor. And enthalpy of fusion means to convert ice to liquid water. maximum density at 276.98, that is approximately 4 degrees C. Density is 1 gram per cc, approximately 1 gram per cc. Its viscosity is 0.89 centipoise. Dielectric constant 78.39. You can also remember it as approximately 80. It is the highest dielectric constant, very high, and this property makes it ionizing in nature and helps it to dissolve a large variety of substances. And it's a very weak conductor of electricity. Its electrical conductivity is very poor. So water has a high heat of vaporization compared to H2S and H2SC due to, give it a thought, pick up an answer. So the answer is extensive hydrogen bonding. What is the density of water at 298 Kelvin? That is 25 degrees C. That is the normal room temperature. So 1 gram per cc. So any such question can be asked related to the table. Now coming to structure of water. In gas phase, water is a bent molecule with a bond angle of 104.5, OH bond length as 95.7, and the hybrid state observed in water being sp3. It has 2 lone pairs and 2 bond pairs. That means its steric number is 4. It has 2 bond pairs and 2 lone pairs. So it has bent shape, whereas its geometry is distorted tetrahedral. Its geometry is distorted tetrahedral. It is a highly polar molecule. Why is it a highly polar molecule? Because of large electronegativity difference between H and O. Electronegativity of O is 3.5 and H is 2.1. So O is the second most electronegative element and H is an element with very less electronegativity. So the bond is highly polar. Water is a highly polar molecule. This is the orbital overlap, sp3 hybrid orbitals, 2 forming bonds with H and 2 having lone pair of electrons. Hydrogen bonding is basically an important force which decides the physical properties of water. It is the electromagnetic attraction between polar molecules. It is considered to be a very strong case of dipole-dipole interaction in which hydrogen is bonded to a highly electronegative atom such as nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine. So in case of water, it is oxygen. It is a measure of separation of positive and negative electric charges. What is a dipole-dipole interaction? It is an interaction between permanent dipoles in molecules. And what is permanent dipole? Permanent dipole exists in a polar molecule. So polar molecule is the one which is formed by atoms having large electronegativity difference. This is a dipole-dipole interaction. This is not a hydrogen bond. This is a dipole-dipole interaction. So if instead of Cl, we have F, which has a still higher electronegativity than Cl, the bond that exists is going to be hydrogen bond. For example, in HCl, the nature of force existing between two molecules is dipole-dipole interaction. Between two molecules, the force is dipole-dipole interaction. But if the electronegativity of the element increases, like instead of HCl, if we have HF, delta negative here is very large, and partial positive charge is also very large, as a result of which the nature of force that exists now is going to be H bond. So H bond is nothing but an extreme case of a very strong dipole-dipole interaction. And this statement was also asked in one of the previous JEE exams. Hydrogen bonding is stronger than van der Waals interactions, but weaker than a covalent or a ionic bond, and it is a kind of intermolecular attraction. In liquid state, water molecules are linked with hydrogen bonding. That is why water has a high boiling point, 100 degrees C, compared to other group 16 hydrides, such as H2S and H2SE. Structure of ice, very important. Ice exists in a crystalline form. At atmospheric pressure, ice crystals are in hexagonal form, but at very low temperatures, they condense to form cubic form. What are hexagonal and cubic forms are a part of class 12 solid state chapter. So this is the structure of ice. A very important point, ice floats on the surface of water because its density is less than that of water. Low density of ice is because of hydrogen bonding, which gives ice an open structure with wide holes or wide vacant spaces. And due to presence of those vacant spaces, the density of ice is less. And how does this point help nature? Density of ice is lighter than water. That means when these glaciers are formed during winter season on the water bodies, these glaciers, these ice crystals do not settle down. If they were to settle down, they would have killed the entire aquatic life. Since they do not settle down, they provide thermal insulation to the marine life, right, against the outside cold conditions and help in the survival. So ice has a highly ordered three-dimensional structure. Studied through X-ray analysis, ice shows that each oxygen atom is surrounded tetrahedrally. These are the points you have to keep in mind. Tetrahedrally by 4 other oxygen atoms, out of which 2 oxygen atoms are bound by covalent bond and 2 others by hydrogen bonds. So water is tetrahedrally surrounded by 4 oxygen atoms, 2 covalently and 2 by hydrogen bonds. And this leads to a cage-like structure. In this cage-like structure, if I repeat this, the cage repeats like this. Okay, this cage-like structure repeats, forming this kind of a structure with a lot of vacant spaces. Now, as ice melts, when ice melts, some hydrogen bonds break. Only some hydrogen bonds break, letting some water molecules free. Letting some water molecules free. These water molecules start occupying the remaining intact lattice. As a result, density begins to increase. Now, when density begins to increase, it keeps on increasing till 4 degrees C. Density starts increasing, increases till 4 degrees C. Till 4 degrees C, the entire cage breaks. All the hydrogen bonds break by the time 4 degrees C temperature is reached. And when you heat beyond that, the separated water molecules start moving apart. Due to high kinetic energy. Due to high kinetic energy, the water molecules start moving apart. As a result, density again begins to decrease. So, a very, very important question that you need to understand here. So, water has maximum density at 4 degrees C. So, two important questions for your exams. Ice is lighter than water. Why? The main reasons are its tetrahedral cage-like structure, which has a lot of vacant space, because of which mass per unit volume is less. Second is water has maximum density at 4 degrees C. Why? Because as you start melting ice, some hydrogen bonds break, some water molecules start occupying the remaining intact vacant spaces, density begins to rise, and after 4 degrees C, all the hydrogen bonds have broken, kinetic energy increases, water molecules start moving apart, so density again begins to decrease. So water has maximum density at 4 degrees C. Coming to chemical properties of water, it has amphoteric nature. That is, it has the ability to act as an acid as well as a base. That means it can give H plus, it can take H plus. Bronsted concept in detail will be studied in equilibrium chapter, but this is any molecular ion that can donate a proton. Acid can donate a proton, and a Bronsted base is an ion or a molecule that can accept a proton, right? So H plus can act as both an acid as well as a base. For example, water plus ammonia to give OH negative plus ammonium ion. Here, water has given a proton to ammonia, so water is acting as a conjugate acid. Ammonia is acting like a conjugate base because it has accepted a proton. But if we treat water with H2S, we get hydronium ion plus S2 negative or HS negative. In this reaction, H2S has given a proton. So H2S is acting like a Bronsted acid, but water has accepted a proton, it is acting like a base. Since it is capable of acting both like an acid as well as a base, it is amphoteric in nature. Water also undergoes autoprotolysis. Autoprotolysis means self-ionization, means one water molecule gives H plus and OH negative, and that H plus combines with another water to form hydronium ion. We've done H plus is an extremely small sized ion. It cannot exist free. So if water is a solvent, whenever H plus is given in water as a solvent, it combines with itself to exist as hydronium ion. This reaction is called self-ionization or autoprotolysis of water. And one water molecule here is acting as an acid, giving a proton. The other water molecule is acting as a base, taking a proton, leading to formation of hydronium ion, the conjugate acid, and OH negative ion, the conjugate base. What is conjugate acid? A substance plus H plus ion gives us conjugate acid, but a substance minus H plus ion gives its conjugate base. Again, this is a concept under Bronsted acid-base concept to be done in detail in equilibrium chapter. When water reacts with active metals, it evolves dihydrogen. For example, if water reacts with sodium metal, it will give sodium hydroxide and liberate hydrogen gas. These reactions are exothermic. That means energy is released in these reactions in case of both alkali and alkaline earth metals. So water is a great source of dihydrogen. Water is oxidized to oxygen during photosynthesis. It is oxidized to oxygen when it reacts with fluorine. Hydrolysis reaction under chemical properties of water. Water has a high dielectric constant, approximately 80, exactly 78 point something and approximately 80, because of which it possesses a very highly ionizing tendency and it's a very strong hydrating tendency. It dissolves many ionic as well as covalent compounds. Ionic because it is polar, covalent because they have a tendency to form hydrogen bond with it. Now, this is sodium nitrite plus water undergoes hydrolysis to give ammonia and sodium hydroxide. You can also think of this reaction as a memory aid. Cut this bond here. The positive part gets the negative part of water, and the negative part gets the positive part of water. So we get from here 3 moles of sodium hydroxide, and from here we get ammonia. This is hydrolysis in presence of water, and hydrolysis means breakdown in presence of water. Hydro water, lysis means breakdown or cleavage. Similarly, P4O10, it's a covalent compound. Sodium nitride was an ionic compound. P4O10 is a covalent compound. This on hydrolysis gives phosphoric acid. Silicon tetrachloride is also a covalent compound. On hydrolysis gives silica plus HCl. Chemical properties of water. Yeah. Under chemical properties of water, we have hydrate formation. Many ionic compounds crystallize from water with one or more molecules of water associated with them. This combination can occur in three ways, either in the form of coordinated water. Coordinated water means water using its lone pairs can give its lone pair to some central metal ion. And this bond, is called as a coordinate bond. So water molecules have a tendency to form coordinate bonds with metal ions. They act as electron pair donors. And electron pair donors, which can form coordinate bonds with metal ions, are also called as ligands. The details again to be done in +2. So remember, water is acting here as a ligand, that is an electron pair donor, that is a substance which is forming hydrogen bonds with the central metal ion. Say this is chromium 3 positive ion. 6 water molecules are going to form 6 hydrogen bonds like this. This is how the hydrogen bond is actually formed. Okay, so water molecules are going to form hydrogen bonds like this. Okay, so this is called coordinated water. The next example is interstitial water. Interstitial water is the one which occupies spaces between an ionic lattice. Say this is barium ion, this is chloride ion, barium ion, chloride ion. If this is an ionic lattice, we have cations and anions. So in this lattice, water molecules can occupy this interstices, the interstitial spaces. So this kind of water is called as interstitial water. Then we have hydrogen bonded water. For example, copper sulfate dot 5H2O. So this is a very important point and a very important question. Copper sulfate dot 5H2O. How are these 5 water molecules associated with copper? 4 water molecules are coordinated into the vacant shell of copper ion. 1 water molecule is hydrogen bonded to sulfate. So if I just explain this in detail, this is 3D9. So this is going to be 3D8. So this is going to be like this. Two, 4, 6, 8. So water is going to use this part. This. The hybrid state will become sp3. Okay. So this is the structure. This is this part. And the 2 positive charge is going to be neutralized by the 2 negative. This is sulfate. And the last water molecule is going to form hydrogen bonds with this sulfate. Like this. So this is the description of copper sulfate dot 5H2. 4 water molecules are coordinated. 1 is hydrogen bonded. Classification of water. Rainwater. Almost pure water mainly contains some dissolved gases from the atmosphere, may be a good solvent. Dissolves many salts of calcium and magnesium. Water can be classified into 2 categories: hard water and soft water. Hard water, water which does not produce lather with soap readily, is called hard water. Hard water contains salts of calcium and magnesium. Point to be noted, very important, calcium and magnesium only in the form of bicarbonates, chlorides, and sulfates. It does not form lather with soap. And remember, these salts are the soluble salts. Calcium, magnesium, bicarbonates, chlorides, and sulfates. These are the soluble salts. These are responsible for hardness of water. These do not allow water to form lather with soap and affect its cleansing property. So it is not suitable for laundry. It is not suitable for boilers, because when boiling is done, then these salts start getting deposited on the inner walls of the boiler, reducing its life. Boiler is basically a closed vessel in which water or other fluids are heated. Soft water is water that produces lather with soap. It is free from these soluble salts of calcium, magnesium. It conveniently gives lather with soap and gives a good cleansing action. So it is suitable for laundry. Also suitable for boilers. Why is hard water not suitable for laundry? Because hard water has a tendency to form scum or a precipitate with soap, an unwanted precipitate. So let us say soap contains sodium stearate. This is one of the examples. Basically, soap contains long chain fatty acid. Soap can contain something like C15, H31, COONA, or any long chain alkyl group here. Okay, so we are taking example of sodium stearate. So sodium stearate reacts with hard water to produce calcium or magnesium stearate. Hard water means it contains calcium or magnesium ions, and it forms this precipitate. It replaces sodium. This salt is soluble. The sodium salt of stearic acid is soluble, whereas the calcium or magnesium salt precipitates out. Okay. So because of which soap gets wasted and dirty scum is formed during washing action, and washing action is not effective. Why is hard water not suitable for boiler? It is harmful for boilers as well because of deposition of salts in the form of scales. You can see whenever you boil water in the same container for a long time, some white scales are formed on the inner walls. That is because of the dissolved salts in hard water. Accumulation of unwanted material on a solid surface is called scale formation. Scale formation reduces efficiency of a boiler. So what is the chemical formula of sodium stearate? Just try to recall. Now you've thought of the answer, so check your answer. This is sodium stearate. Hardness of water. Hardness of water is of two types: temporary hardness and permanent hardness. Temporary hardness is due to presence of bicarbonates. Point to be noted. Temporary hardness is due to bicarbonates. We discussed hardness is due to three ions: bicarbonates, chlorides, and sulfates. Temporary hardness is due to bicarbonates of magnesium and calcium. Must know the formulas as well. Temporary hardness of water can be removed by two processes: boiling. It is called temporary because it can be easily removed by simple boiling. Bicarbonates of calcium and magnesium, they decompose on boiling to form insoluble calcium and magnesium carbonate. So since insoluble carbonates are formed, they can be filtered and removed. So this is removing temporary hardness. Temporary hardness is due to bicarbonates. Why does this happen? Because of low solubility product of magnesium hydroxide compared to that of magnesium carbonate. But again, this point will be clear when you do equilibrium chapter. Magnesium bicarbonate on heating converts to magnesium carbonate and water. Magnesium carbonate is insoluble. Carbon dioxide escapes off, and filtration of water can give us soft water. So since this kind of hardness can be removed by boiling, it is called temporary hardness. Second is Clark's method. Process is used on a commercial scale. Calculated amount of slaked lime is added to hard water, which precipitates out calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide, which can be filtered off. So calcium bicarbonate of hard water, slaked lime is calcium hydroxide. This precipitates out calcium carbonate, which can be removed by filtration. Similarly, for magnesium bicarbonate, we get formation of magnesium hydroxide. If excess of quicklime is added, water will again become hard due to absorption of carbon dioxide. So it has to be limited amount of quicklime added. Temporary hardness is due to, check your learning. Yeah, it is magnesium bicarbonate. Temporary hardness of water can be removed by boiling. So this is how questions can be asked. We come to permanent hardness. How to remove permanent hardness? First, permanent hardness is due to the presence of soluble salts of magnesium and calcium in the form of chlorides and sulfates. Temporary hardness was due to bicarbonates. Permanent is due to chlorides and sulfates. Why is it called permanent? It cannot be removed by boiling. It cannot be removed by simple boiling. So the first method for removing permanent hardness, treating it with washing soda, that is sodium carbonate. It reacts with soluble calcium and magnesium chlorides to form insoluble carbonates. A chemical method. So outcome is the same. We are converting chlorides and sulfates to carbonates which precipitate out and can be removed by filtration. Next is Calgon method. What is Calgon? Calgon is sodium hexametaphosphate. This is the formula. Formula is to be learned. When Calgon is added to hard water, what does it do? It basically traps the calcium or magnesium ions in the form of a complex. It traps calcium and magnesium ions in the form of a complex. You can observe some sodium ions have been replaced. 2 sodium ions per mole have been replaced by 1 metal ion. Because this metal is too positive, 2 sodium ions means 2 positive charges removed. Instead, 2 positive ion has been added. And since this metal gets bound in the form of this complex, it is no more free to form scum or precipitate. This complex anion keeps the magnesium and ions in solution, doesn't allow it to form precipitate. And this method, children, from where did this name came, Calgon? It came from the point calcium gone. Calcium gone. This method is also called as sequestration method. Sequestration method means where the ions are, the calcium and magnesium ions are not removed from solution. These are not removed from solution, but are rendered ineffective. They are rendered ineffective by trapping them in form of a complex. This complex cannot cannot ionize metal ions freely into solution, and hence it cannot form a scum, which is responsible for ineffective cleansing action. The next is ion exchange method. This method is also called the zeolite or the permutate process. And remember, zeolite is naturally occurring. Zeolite is naturally occurring. Permutate is synthetic. Naturally occurring and synthetic. Hydrated sodium aluminium silicate is called zeolite. When zeolite is added in hard water, exchange reaction takes place. AlSiO4, we have expressed it by the symbol Z. So when sodium aluminium silicate is treated with M2 plus, where M2 plus is magnesium or calcium ion, what happens? We get magnesium aluminium silicate or calcium aluminium silicate. So zeolite basically gets exhausted when all the sodium in it is used up. The sodium goes into solution and the aluminium silicate traps the magnesium or calcium ion. So what is the net outcome of that? Free sodium ions in solution do not cause hardness. So just try and understand, the calcium and magnesium ions were responsible for hardness because they form scum. When we add sodium aluminium silicate to this water sample, what really happens is sodium gets replaced with calcium. So sodium ions become free in solution, and instead calcium and magnesium get trapped in the form of this compound. Okay, but this ion, we had chloride ions also, we had sulfate ions also. And calcium chloride and magnesium sulfate are responsible for causing hardness. But sodium chloride and sodium sulfate are not responsible for causing hardness. These are simple soluble salts which do not precipitate out or do not form scum. So the purpose is solved, hardness is removed. Now, after the entire zeolite gets exhausted, means all the Z have been replaced with metal, then we add sodium chloride solution. Remember, sodium chloride solution is added to regenerate zeolite. Once the zeolite all gets used up, all the sodium ions have been replaced by this metal. Now this zeolite is going to be treated with sodium chloride again to give back the original compound. So this brings down the cost of the process. The zeolite can be used again and again. This is regeneration of the zeolite. So what do we use for regeneration of zeolite? Aqueous sodium chloride solution, also called as brine. Permutate process for water softening, the zeolite process. Permutate is synthetic sodium aluminium silicate. So this is how we set up the apparatus. We have a layer of gravel. Gravel is simply to form a base. Then we add zeolite. Hard water is let in, and this hard water starts rising up by capillary action. When this hard water starts rising up by capillary action, as it passes through this permutate, it exchanges its calcium and magnesium ions. Calcium and magnesium ions are left here, and we also have zeolite here, that is aluminium silicate, and sodium ions go along with chloride and sulfate, and this constitutes soft water. The soft water is removed from here. This is the experimental setup. And once the process is done, soft water has been formed, the exhausted zeolite, this zeolite now contains calcium and magnesium ions. So we are going to now allow sodium chloride over it so as to replace again the calcium ions with sodium ions. So this is called regeneration. Permanent hardness of water arises due to. So the right answer is D part. Common name of sodium hexametaphosphate is Calgon. Coming to permanent hardness, the second method, the synthetic resin method. Nowadays, hard water is softened by using synthetic resin method. This method is more efficient than the zeolite process. This method consists of cation exchange resins and anion exchange resins. Cation exchange resins contain large organic molecules such as SO3H or COH. This is a line that you need to learn. This will be asked as questions. So cation exchange resin contains organic molecules with these two acid groups. These are the two organic acid groups. The anion exchange resin contains giant organic molecules with basic group derived from amines. So you have to remember the cation exchange resin contains COH and SO3H, which are going to replace the cations, that is calcium ion and magnesium ions, with H positive ion. Both these have H positive ions. So the calcium and magnesium ions of hard water the calcium and magnesium ions of hard water will be replaced with H plus ions. And the anions, that is chlorides and sulfates of hard water, will be replaced with OH negative ion, such that both these ions causing hardness, when they're removed, they are replaced with H plus and OH negative ion, which means this reaction is going to give pure demineralized water. Deionized water, which is free of any cations, neither sodium nor calcium nor magnesium. So one of the specific points about synthetic resin method is this exchanges both cations and anions, in contrast to the permutate method with the exchanged only cations. So this exchanges both cations and anions, and we have finally pure H2O, just H positive and OH negative ions. So pure demineralized water free from all soluble mineral salts is obtained by passing water successively through cation exchange and anion exchange resins. So these are the points that I've already explained. RH plus M2 plus to give Mr2 plus 2H plus. So basically this is the resin. This is the resin. This can be anything like RCOOH, or this can be RSO3H, anything which contains acidic H. It replaces its H with M2. So we're going to have this, and H plus will go free in solution. The anion exchange resin similarly is going to exchange OH negative ions like this. The X here is either chloride or sulfate. So finally, we have deionized or demineralized water. And after the resins get exhausted, means all the H plus and OH negative have been used, we're going to use dilute acid and dilute alkali to regenerate. To regenerate means we had RCOOH, and these gave away H plus and instead took up the calcium ions. Right? These went into making demineralized water. So to this resin, the calcium or magnesium salt, when dilute acid is added, the H plus ions will replace it back, and we will get the original resin recovered. So this is for regeneration. Permutate was regenerated using sodium chloride, and this is regenerated using dilute acid and dilute alkali. This is the setup. We have a cation exchange resin. This cation exchange resin here would contain either RCOOH or RSO3H, and this is going to contain RNH3OH. So from the first, when water is sent here, hard water is sent. This is hard water. Hard water means contains magnesium ions, contains calcium ions, it contains chlorides, it contains sulfate. So we have hard water let in here. So when it passes through this, the water that comes out now is H plus, chloride, and sulfate. It is a cation-free water. Calcium and magnesium ions are left here. Okay, so when this water passes through this, the water that comes out here is now only H plus and OH negative ion, because chloride and sulfate are left back here. So after this gets exhausted, अब ये खत्म हो गया, यहाँ से ये निकल गया, we have chloride and sulfate. Finally, we are going to regenerate this. Regenerate by pouring. We are going to regenerate. This is regenerated with dilute HCl, dilute acid. So we're going to put dilute acid for regeneration from here, when again these calcium and magnesium ions are going to wash out, and here H will get replaced. And this is regenerated using dilute sodium hydroxide, dilute alkali, which is going to provide OH negative ions. So this is the regeneration process. You have to learn under all these headings. The last topic that we need to do is heavy water. Heavy water was discovered by Harold Clayton Urey. It is D2O is known as heavy water. It contains a heavier isotope of hydrogen, that is deuterium. It is poisonous in nature. Rate of reaction of heavy water is slow. Why? Because the bond dissociation enthalpy is more than hydrogen. We've already discussed that the heavier isotopes have a higher value of physical constants like bond dissociation energy. How is preparation of D2O done? Electrolysis of 30 liters of water gives 1 ml of heavy water. It can be obtained as a byproduct in some fertilizer industries. 30 liters of water gives 1 ml of heavy water. What is the criteria for this, children? When electrolysis is done, so water is going to contain small percentage of heavy water. This is going to give H plus and OH negative. This is going to give D plus and OD negative. Okay. So when electrolysis is done, since heavy water has weaker bonds than heavy water. Why? Because the bond dissociation energy of OH bond is lesser than OD bond. All physical constants of a all physical constants of a heavier isotope have higher value. So water keeps getting electrolyzed. D2O gets electrolyzed very slowly. So finally what happens? Water electrolyze होके hydrogen oxygen बनके evolve off होता जाएगा and पीछे concentration of heavy water will keep on increasing. So when 30 liters of water is electrolyzed, only 1 ml of heavy water is obtained. Physical properties of heavy water, if you observe, all the values are more than normal water, more than H2O. But I just want to bring to your notice only the dielectric constant of heavy water is less than normal water. All other physical constants of water are lesser, heavy water are more. This is again because of isotopic effect. Uses of heavy water, extensively used as a moderator in nuclear reactors, that is to slow down the speed of neutrons, and in exchange reactions for the study of reaction mechanisms. The basis of its use in exchange reactions for study of reaction mechanisms is because the bond energy involved in breaking a D bond is more than any H bond. So the rate of reaction differs and it helps us in studying the mechanisms of reactions. It is used in preparation of other deuterium compounds. So these reactions are very simple, children, to remember. These are exactly similar to what we study for water. For example, when we talk of calcium carbide and water, so calcium carbide and water gives acetylene, C2H2, and calcium hydroxide. And you can also do it as a memory aid. If I cut it here and give this OH and give this H, I do hydrolysis of calcium carbide, I'll get calcium hydroxide and ethyne. This is ethyne or acetylene, that is HC triple bond CH, right? And if instead we use D2O, we are getting this product. Similarly, sulfur trioxide, when added to water, gives sulfuric acid. Sulfur trioxide is an anhydride of sulfuric acid. Similarly, instead of water, if we are adding D2O, we get D2SO4. Same manner, aluminium carbide, if I talk of hydrolysis of aluminium carbide, I give 4OH 12 OH groups here, and I give 4 OH here, 4 H here. Just a moment. Aluminium carbide, Al4C3. So if we are doing hydrolysis, I give 12 OH to this, and I give 12 H to this. As a result, what do I get? I'm going to get from here 4 AlOH thrice, and from here I'm going to get 3 CH4. Right? So instead of water, if we are using heavy water, we're getting similar compounds, CD4, and instead of aluminium hydroxide, we get aluminium deuteroxide. Okay. So check your knowledge. In atomic reactors, heavy water is used as a moderator. What is the boiling point of D2O? How can you judge? There's only one value which is above the boiling point of water. So you can simply pick that up even if you don't remember the exact value. All the physical constants of D2O are higher than H2O. So I close the chapter here, children. This is your basic requirement for NCERT. I hope you do well in your exams, and please like, share, and subscribe for more such content. Thank you, and all the best for your exams.